You're listening to the Bear in Mind podcast, episode number 38.
A podcast uncovering identity, color, and love, where driving yourself crazy is totally sane and curable. Now your host, T. Bias.
Ulterior motives, hidden agendas. What do you do when you suspect someone of having one? I used to be a person that always kind of assumed that somebody had a hidden agenda. I didn't trust people right away, and I've done a lot of work on not going into situations where somebody behaves a certain way. I think, there's a hidden agenda behind their behavior. And now I practice more of giving people the benefit of the doubt. Yet, what do you do when something feels off and it seems like maybe somebody's not being totally authentic with you and there might actually be a hidden agenda, an ulterior motive in how they're behaving? And this actually came up quite recently. I had a conversation with an acquaintance of mine. I met her in person and we had a discussion, and it got me thinking as I was talking about, manipulation and things like that, and people's ulterior motives. Maybe they're not manipulating, but they do have a hidden agenda. What are kind of some of the things that I needed to know and think about so that I could not let myself be quote unquote manipulated by the other person, and what to do actually when you suspect that somebody might actually have a hidden agenda with you. So something that I've kind of changed in my approach to social gatherings in my life is to look at my objective or purpose of my social gathering or meeting somebody. And we don't normally do this. And it's the one thing that kind of has saved me a lot of headache in the past. So I'll explain to you what I mean by looking at your objective or your purpose whenever you meet somebody. So you go on, let's say, a first date. And a lot of times if we're in the middle of dating and maybe our goal is to find a life partner, the end goal is. But the objective or the purpose of the first date is actually to decide if you want to have a second date. That is really the objective. It's not to identify the life partner in the course of your first date. And the same is true when you go on networking events for your career or something. In that kind of event, you have maybe an objective to meet a handful of contacts, to get a couple of business contacts. And in those situations, you can see that clarifying that purpose for yourself can save you a lot of heartache, that you don't go into maybe like the first date thinking that you need to identify a life partner, or go to a networking event thinking you're going to get a job out of it. And so it's really separating out, maybe you have this goal that you want to achieve and that the gathering doesn't really accomplish that goal. It's not the end all to accomplishing what you want out of it. It's a step, and the immediate kind of purpose of it is to get you to the next step. And it's something that most of us, we don't do consciously. We don't say, okay, what's my objective? Even when I go to a meetup with a bunch of acquaintances, what's my objective there? Is my objective to come out of it with the best friend? And the answer is no. And I learned this from reading a book by Priya Parker called The Art of Gathering. She talks a lot about purpose, especially more in ritualized events, traditions, and stuff like that. So I highly recommend that you check out episode number 10 called Love Traditions, where I talk more about this purpose and the frustration that happens when we don't clarify it for ourselves. And where things get further kind of messy is the fact that the other person or the other group of people at a gathering, they don't share the same objectives. And you can maybe see this maybe when it's just two people. And if you look at going on a date, if somebody is trying to identify right away within that first date, if that person is a suitable life partner, their behaviors will seem odd to you. And that's what I mean by it might seem off, or that somebody might have an ulterior motive or a hidden agenda, because how that other person is going to behave is based on kind of how they see the purpose of that date. They might start asking questions about your family history, or, go really digging more deep into your background or something like that. Just odd questions that when you meet somebody for the first time, you don't usually go into such topics like that. And it might feel off to you because both of you don't have the same objective. And that can happen in anything, a networking event where somebody is trying to land a job at that networking event rather than just get contacts or something. You have a different objective and somebody else comes in with another objective. So what do you do when you notice that maybe somebody has a different agenda or a different purpose in meeting with you? Sometimes we tend to put in our energy in trying to get that person to reveal what it is that they're actually wanting, what their objective is from interacting with you. And that's going to waste a lot of time and energy, especially if that person, first of all, probably may not even be consciously aware of it, or if they are really trying to maybe manipulate the situation, they're definitely not going to reveal it. So eventually what ends up happening is that the true agenda of someone who's trying to hide something eventually comes out in the open without you having to do anything. And that's actually what happened to me in my recent outing with an acquaintance. And I think that this will kind of wrap everything together when it comes to when you first suspect someone might not have the same agenda as yourself. So I had met this person through a mutual friend of ours. We had gone out to lunch as a group of ours, and I had sat next to her, and we chatted. And a while later, I would say several months later, she contacts me and messages me through our social group. We're also in a social group online. And she says, "Hey, would you like to meet up and go for a walk and grab a cup of coffee or something?" And I said, "Sure, let's do that." And in my head, I thought, okay, this is an acquaintance through a mutual friend, and we can get to know each other a little bit better. And so she lived in the area, so we met up for a cup of coffee, and our conversation was a little off. And what I mean by off is that every time I shared my story, usually in response to one of her questions, is she would respond with a solution. And I would think, okay, I'm not having a problem with this, yet she'd have the solution for it. Even something to do with my work or something, she would say, okay, here's something, that you should do. And because she was constantly trying to be helpful and provide solutions, I did think, okay, I don't think she's here to get to know me. I think there's something else in why she wanted to meet up. And so we said goodbye. And then the next day she sent me a text saying, "Oh, it was great to meet up with you and chat," and a really nice message. And then I kind of had the thought, well, should I meet up with her? Since she reached out to me and invited me to do something, should I reach then out to her? And that's kind of one of the things that plays in your head, is what we think that we should do. Somebody reached out to me. Okay, now it's my turn to invite her to do something. At least that's one of my shoulds in my life. And whenever we feel like something's off in something, we tend to either obsess about why it's off with the other person. Like, okay, why did she try to meet up with me? Or we get muddled into what we think we should do as opposed to what do we really want to do. And then the question I ask myself is, do I want to get to know her better without any sort of influences by my shoulds, by society? And also adding on to that question is is this how I want to fulfill my desire for community and friendship? Is with her. And I think what you'll end up doing is actually clearing up your own ulterior motive and hidden agenda. And what I mean by this is, in the instance of this acquaintance that I met, is I had a desire to have community and friendship in the area that I live in. And I would go into an interaction with her trying to make that happen, trying to make that a goal. And not even realizing maybe that's not even her goal or her objective in meeting me and getting to know me. And so then we constantly kind of fight and resist how somebody is behaving when in fact they are behaving in a certain way, and you don't quite understand why they're behaving in this way, yet you have this need and this desire to fulfill something in your life, and then you try to go in and kind of maybe manipulate the situation so that it does fit what you want out of it, when actually the other person isn't behaving that way. And that's an example of what happened with the woman that I met. We were acquaintances, and I went in saying, hey, we're going to get to know each other better. And instead the conversation didn't follow that kind of rhythm. And it turns out about a month later, she sends me a message and asks me how I am. And then she says, I remember you saying something that you had a problem with your skin. And it just so happens I sell skincare products, and here's a great product for you to try. And so in that message, there was a sales, kind of check out this message, contact me. And this was the first time in my life that I kind of said, well, do I want to hang out with her? And I'm just going to answer that question without thinking about anything else. And the answer was no. And then eventually her hidden agenda revealed itself to me, that actually she is trying to sell me something. She contacted me hoping to make a contact and somewhat of a connection so that the next time around she could introduce her products. And so the two biggest things that we can do really when it comes to thinking or sensing that somebody has a hidden agenda is, one, it's not our job to reveal it. It'll eventually come out. And two is to really be clear about our own agenda. What is it that we want? What is the purpose and objective and our end goal, in understanding how even our social interactions play on some of those desires for certain goals, and going in with a very clear purpose of what it is that we really want. And if I had wanted to get to know the person who was trying to sell me the skincare products, I could then be clear to her saying, look, I'm not here to buy products. However, I would enjoy chatting with you and getting to know you better. And her answer could have very well been, no, I'm not interested in that. And that clears up a lot of that hidden agenda, and it saves so much time in the future and spending time in relationships where two people don't share the same purpose or agenda. And my agenda for this episode is that I highly recommend that you check out episode number 10, Love Traditions, and I'll check back with you next week.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.